Chairman of the Banking Committee, Senator Tim Scott. It's good to have you on.
Thank you. Well, y'all were having a great time before I got here. Let's just start by saying,
what do you think?
A wealth tax is just a terrible idea, number one. Number two, when I first heard about the concept of taxing unrealized gain, I think it was Secretary Geithner in 2015 under the Obama administration came into the Finance Committee and suggested that there's a way for us to tax unrealized gain that would be positive. And I thought to myself, how about the farmers who own thousands and thousands of acres in South Carolina? How are they going to pay that tax? Well, Geithner had an answer. We'll give you 15 years to pay that tax. Terrible concept. And the fact of the matter is, in our country, the bottom 50% of earners pay essentially zero in taxes. The bottom line is a simple one, that if we want more revenues, we've got to figure out how to incent that. You don't incent that by higher taxes. We've seen that throughout in history, from the 1930s to where we are today. The one thing that's been consistent, as we raise taxes, right, as we raise the rate on taxes, the revenue goes down.
Let me ask you, though, and this is, I think, it's where I disagree with Elizabeth Warren, too. I'm not necessarily sure that the wealth tax is the appropriate way, but there is a question about labor versus capital.
Yep.
And whether capital gains today, which are at a lower rate, make sense for the wealthiest. So there are people who are making in any given year $5, 10, 15, $100 million in capital gains.
Yes.
And whether the original argument for capital gains was to incentivize investment, right? That's why we had the lower rate. There could be an argument that, I don't know, after the first $1 million, $2 million, $3 million you make in capital gains, that it doesn't change the incentive behavior anymore to invest. Of course you're going to invest because you have the money, that maybe you tax that at a higher rate.
I think history has proven to us that when you lower I think this was the Clinton years or Bush years, when you lower the capital gains tax, the revenues went up. When you increase the capital gains tax, the revenue went down. Why? Because people who make that capital gains, they make the decision, as opposed to realizing the gain now, wait till a more advantageous time to do so. That means that the tax rate is not the only consideration. It's the tax revenue that comes from the rate. And if we want to have more revenue, then you probably have to have a lower rate. And once again, back in the Clinton and Bush years, we saw the rate went down, but the revenue went up. And frankly, even under President Trump, we've seen $5 trillion of an extension of the Working Families Tax Cut bill. What does that do? It stimulates activity in the economy. And we do have this serious struggle between employment and employers, capital and workers. How do we solve that problem? I think we look at it from the long view. The long view is that the capital gains tax that is realized is reinvested in the economy, creating more jobs. So if we're really concerned about labor, I think we both are concerned about labor. The question is, who creates more jobs? And we need to make sure that those job creators have the incentives to continue to create those jobs here. Classic example, California, New York. There's an exodus. Why? They've taxed people out of their state. We have to be very careful on taxation.
I guess the question becomes, if it's done on a federal level, where do you go? You think you lose? You think you lose the wealthiest people out of the United States?
Is it 2% a year, Andrew? It's not just
2% a year.
2% a year.
I mean, I've seen like compounding studies done, and it's a big number. But do you know total what? I mean, I didn't know it was going down to 50.
Or Anthropic.
The total amount of money is not going to solve things.
No, listen.
It's punitive against the most successful people in the country.
We spend $7 trillion plus as a nation. A wealth tax is not the answer that we need. What we need is to examine where we're spending money and what are the federal responsibilities. The problem we really have in this nation is that the only government that has an endless credit card, federal government. States are required to balance their budget. If you really wanted to slow down federal spending, let's pass an amendment that says you must balance.
You think we can work with what we get?
You can't even pass funding bills at this point.
I'm sorry?
You can't even pass funding bills at this point.
Thank God for Susan Collins. We had 13 bills finally passed through the Senate called the appropriations process. We're working. Why? Because Susan Collins took on the responsibility of making sure that we met the need of the American people by painfully going through the process of creating a bipartisan success story. Not celebrated almost anywhere in the country. But we did it several months ago. So the bottom line is that we've done it before, we can do it again. It takes strong leadership. Susan Collins has done that. It proves that this Congress and this Senate can work in a bipartisan fashion. We've done the same thing on the banking committee. We've had housing bill passed 24-0, fentanyl 22-0. We've seen the kind of success that the American people can celebrate if we talk about it.
But does Senator Warren have a point? My point was we're at 24% of GDP we spend, we raise the same amount, right?
Yeah, right.
Even after the Trump tax cuts, we're still raising 18%. But we're at 24. That's why we're 6% shy. That's why the deficit keeps going up. Can't we? I mean, what if we said keep spending 20? That's not even enough for Democrats. 24% is not enough. They won't even.
But part of the issue, and this is, I think, the issue is the rate. To the extent you believe the tax policy is a manifestation of the democracy, if you have people who are paying 20, 22%, 15% who are billionaires, and you are probably paying 50+%, whether people look at that and think that that's fair, that the laborers,
combination with federal and state.
right? Yeah. The laborers are paying more.
To accrue the billion, they paid the 60 to get there. They paid the 60 to get there.
Here's the actual question, though: is let's take a look at how we apply the tax code and how much you actually pay. What is your actual tax rate? The poorest Americans pay 0 in federal taxes. The standard deduction gives you more back than you pay. And so the reality of it is that in this country, the top 2% top 2% of earners pay about 38 to 40% of overall taxation. The top 10% gets you closer to 60%. The bottom 50%, about 0%. So the truth of the matter is, if we're really worried about the poorest Americans and coming from a single-parent household in poverty, the one thing I can tell you, I care a lot about how we treat the poorest Americans. And if the real tax rate that you pay is about 0% and you get a refund, I'm okay with that.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for hosting us here today.
Senator,
thank you for joining us.
We're out of time. We got so much to talk about.
I thought we were just getting started.
Just getting started.
This is not a part 2.
We got to hand this over. Squawk on the Street comes next. Thank you very much.
Yes,
We'll see you back here.